Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.
And I'm the inspirational Andy Murray from WhatCulture. And remember, a real shooter always keeps one in the chamber.
They certainly do. The regular news will be coming a little bit later on today, but we are here with breaking news, hot off the press, all about Jon Moxley appearing on Talk is Jericho. And, well, he's not held much back, has he?
He really hasn't. And we are here to officially declare to all of you that shoot season is open. Pew, pew, pew,
Where do you start with something like this?
Yeah, Jon Moxley is really let loose on the latest episode of the Talk is Jericho podcast. And, well, it's probably one of the most incendiary podcast appearances I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's called The Emancipation of Jon Moxley, if you want to go and listen to it. It is being compared in our office, at least, since when everyone's walked in today, to the classic CM Punk Colt Cabana podcast.
Yes, it is, and it may eventually go down like that as time passes by. This is essentially a shoot interview. Now, we're used to people coming onto podcasts and giving up a few backstage nuggets of information and a few interesting stories in this, but this is full on ether. This is what Nas did to Jay-Z back in the day. This is what Tupac and Biggie did all the time to each other on classic diss track. This is no Vaseline by Ice Cube. This is something else.
I mean, you look at some of the quotes just coming straight off the top of it. Whether AEW exists or not, I was still leaving WWE, he says. If there was no other promotions in the world to work for, I still would have left WWE.
Yeah, that's how miserable this guy was. He was willing to leave the profession entirely because WWE was such a terrible experience for him. And obviously, he's now landed in the two other biggest promotions in the world, AEW and New Japan. It's worked out very well for him so far. But can you imagine Dean Ambrose or Jon Moxley just vanishing from the public sphere entirely after... You know, he wasn't always the most pushed wrestler in WWE, but at any given point, he was one of the top, 5 or 6 stars?
Yeah, he's always up there for them. He was always someone that they rated, and certainly the fans rated as someone who could be a real commodity.
And can you imagine him just like vanishing off the face of the earth? It's really kind of galling to think of. There's some other stuff he really digs into here. He talks a lot about his character, and he says that Vince always thought that his character was just this wacky guy who did crazy stuff. So we obviously saw that with that stupid potted plant. What was it called again? Mitch, before the comment section kills us for that again. Attacking people with hot dog cars, losing to Bray Wyatt via singing children and exploding TVs, all that crap. And
I like
the
lunatic edge to his character, but that shouldn't have defined him. But with Vince, it's always very much like, you're the happy one, you're the crazy one.
Yeah.
And that's just it. One of the biggest things that he mentions here, one of the key things that's already getting covered by everyone and, you know, being mentioned on stuff like Squared Circle, he said that Vince tried to talk him into saying a line about Roman's cancer that was apparently going to be so bad it would have probably lost them sponsors. The mind boggles.
Yeah, that, I mean, I wish I could say I'm surprised. I really wish I could. You know, there was always going to be an awkward situation there with Roman's leukemia returning and Dean and Seth technically feuding. Like, how do you kind of address that without being really crass and disgusting? Obviously, that nearly came to pass. And, you know, good on Mr. Moxley here for standing up for himself and saying no, because a lot of wrestlers who didn't have that level of confidence and kind of felt like they were tied to whatever Vince tells them to do might have said that and potentially destroyed not only like the company's relations with these sponsors, but their own careers as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be the ones who gets remembered for saying it, not being told by WWE.
And it just kind of shows that there's no line in WWE. Like, no topic is off limits. Vince wanted to use a line so bad it would have cost them sponsors relating to a man's potentially fatal illness.
It's unbelievable.
It's gross stuff. Like,
do you know what I've really found fascinating? Glancing at this and then thinking back. Do you remember when we were raving about that WWE Chronicle episode about Dean Ambrose?
Yes.
And how we said that this should be the catalyst, this should be the way that they use it, centering around his turn on Seth Rollins, and then they did all that bollocks with him being a germaphobe and wearing a gas mask and saying people are smelly. Yeah, he hated it way more than you and I hated it. He said that when he was injured, he said he was miserable. He wanted to leave back in July last year, wanted to just quit straight up. And then he talks about these promos that he was given during that really botched heel turn and feud with Seth Rollins. Not down to Dean Ambrose, by the way, or Jon Moxley, whatever we're calling him nowadays. he said basically he never understood the WWE's promos that he wrote for him, which are kind of a complaint that I suspect a lot of WWE stars have, and said that they didn't make any sense. He says in one of his germaphobe promos, he says there was originally a joke about a pooper scooper and how he wouldn't go out there without it. He said he wasn't saying it, and talked about the process he had to regularly go through to get stuff changed.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in with another one of the comments here where he says he didn't like the hokey-ish that he was made to do by WWE, which was originally reported as the reason he'd asked for his release back in January. The talk was that he really hated being presented as this wacky cartoon character. And can you imagine Dean Ambrose walking around Raw with a pooper scooper? Like, it's just really absurd stuff. You know, the gas mask was dumb enough, but a pooper scooper, what's he gonna do? Like, just have a bottle of hand sanitizer? Like, walking around, scooshing everyone in the backstage area?
Well, you look at, he continues to talk about, remember the promo where he got injected in the bum?
Yeah.
And we all went,
Dr. Heine 2.0.
Okay, he said, basically, he got to Raw, he got handed this script where it said, Dean Ambrose gets injected in the bum. He was staring at the paper, seething over it. He went to go and meet Vince, and Vince thought it wasn't comedy, because Vince doesn't understand everything, and thought it was well written and would get a ton of heat. That summarises what's wrong with WWE today.
No, it really does. It's a bunch of, numpty writers writing for extremely creative performers who are incredibly stifled, and then when they get turned loose on other circuits, as we saw with Mr. Moxley over the past few days, suddenly they're good again, and, it's a massive surprise when it really shouldn't be. They're kind of held back by this really restrictive writing room. And look, go and contrast, like, some of the crap Dean was doing in the later terms of his WWE run, particularly during the Rollins feud, which absolutely stunk. Compare that with the Paradigm Shift promo he just cut for AEW. Really sublime stuff. Contrast it with the vignette that just revealed him as the mysterious stabby bar knife broken bottle man in New Japan. Again, really, really great stuff. It just goes to show, man, it highlights a lot of problems with the company.
Now, I know a lot of people might be thinking, well, how come he suddenly come out and said this? I think it's one of those things where this is just built and built and built and built, because he says in there as well, look, all these promos that we're mentioning that he hated doing, he still did it. He said he'd pull it off for Vince. He said he'd done that in the past thousands of times. So it's just a case of, I suppose some of them, they fight and they want to get these promos changed, and others they just go, what's the point? I'll just do what they ask.
Yeah, that's the thing. Trying to force change in WWE, well, it's certainly admirable, and I think, like, if everyone stood up and do that, it might make a difference at the moment, because it's only a couple of different people who actually have the stones. Your Dean Ambrose, your Sasha Banks, your Revivals, your Luke Harpers, name more, there are probably many more. Because it's only a few of them, it's almost kind of pointless, because you're swimming against the tide and you're probably going to drown, because Vince can extend your contract and hold you forever. So it's kind of good in a way that Dean, because he was in quite a fortunate situation, because his contract was expiring and he was able to just let it run out and then walk away, if indeed you believe it's a shoot. But
not now is not the time.
No, we'll dive into that gimmick later on, I'm sure. But one of the most telling things about, like, how he was getting on in WWE towards the end is a point he makes here where he said he felt physically sick every Monday because he was worried about the stuff that they were going to have him do. Now, that is just the grimmest thing in the world. Can you imagine being in a situation where, look, I'm sure lots of people viewing this potentially have maybe been in jobs and stuff that they've loathed, and you get the Sunday night panic of, oh God, I have to go into this place and all this stuff. But can you imagine doing that for something like wrestling, which is supposed to be this guy's dream job in the biggest promotion in the world? It's so ass backwards.
Yeah, and it's also the thing it's not only ruining the thing that you love to do, it's the fact that they are putting him out there, committing things to tape that will be there forever.
Forever, yeah, forever. Little kids will be 3-4 years from now, maybe decades from now, going on YouTube, typing in Dean Ambrose and seeing him fanning around with a potted plant in a hot dog cart. That's going to be tied to him forever. Like, that's going to be tied to Dean Ambrose forever. Jon Moxley might be a different story, a few years from now, but it really sucks.
I think the one thing I've taken away from this as well is the catalyst for him going, right, this is officially it now, is the way that they brought him back following that injury. We saw what they did with the Chronicle and the heel turn, but he basically said the moment he came back, he wanted to turn heel. He pitched that to Vince, He wanted a completely new character, and he loved tagging with Seth. He's not shooting on his brothers in the Shield. We should mention here. He basically hated how they brought him back, even down to Seth bringing him out. So even one of his best friends bring him out. He didn't want that to happen. He wanted to come back, be a heel, be this new character, and they just went, nah, we can shift for some more Shield merch.
Yeah, sorry about that, brother. We got to sell more money. Typical, yeah, really typical. And to kind of sum the whole thing off, he got this big grand farewell. He got all these goodbyes, all these final matches, and they sent him out in really an unprecedented way because presumably they want him to come back. And they did that Shield special on the network. I don't quite, was it Farewell to the Shield? The Shield's last, whatever it was.
Shield's final stand or something, final chapter, I think.
You'd think, nice big payday for the boys, nice big pat on the back. How much did Dean Ambrose earn for that, according to Mr. Moxley here on Talk is Jericho? $500.
Speaking of his departure as well, we should mention very quickly, he was hoping that they do the classic thing that normally people do. We were speculating about why they were doing what they were doing in terms of keeping him sweet and being such a weird farewell for him, like we've referenced in the past. He was hoping that they bury him, take him off TV, do all the usual stuff, and he was told the night of. When he took that bump from Nia, if you remember, he was told the night of when that happened, and he was absolutely furious. Now, we should clarify here, not about Nia, but about the timing of it, and he tried to justify it and said he didn't know, Vince tried to justify it, sorry, and said he didn't know Ambrose was unhappy. I mean, right, despite the fact that Dean said he'd been voicing it for years, when he was eventually decided he was leaving, he went to Triple H and Vince and said he wasn't signing. Yeah. When he eventually said he was leaving and that was it sort of thing, he was calm, explained himself, and said that Vince was crying.
Wow. If anything speaks to Vince McMahon's lack of self-awareness, or just general awareness, really, in 2019, that's probably the story. Really go and listen to this podcast. It's really tremendous stuff. It is one of the most notable pieces of wrestling media that will come out this year, and it will be poured over and picked apart and analysed greatly over the coming weeks and maybe even the coming months. And it's really refreshing to hear him express all these bottled up feelings and so forth. But it will make you really annoyed, as you can probably tell by what we've just gone through here.
Do you think, Andy Murray, that we may see more and more of these coming? Like, I know obviously when the CM Punk thing happened, there was this massive backlash. There was legal things. There was people getting sued left, right, and centre. And, there wasn't an alternative. CM Punk left because he didn't want to do it anymore, and then he ended up going to the UFC. Yeah. As we mentioned now, we've sort of talked about AEW as this alternative for fans, and we've mentioned it as an alternative for wrestlers in terms of being able to go and wrestle somewhere else. But do you think this could be just like an opportunity to just be like, right, this is how they, some wrestlers maybe want wrestling to be done, and they can finally reveal all the bollocks that goes on with WWE, and most importantly of all, by the sounds of this, with Vince McMahon.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely see more of this happening, particularly now. This is the kind of stuff that would have been restricted back in the day to shoot interview DVDs that 1,000 people would have watched and would have eventually made their way to YouTube 10 years later when the points made are irrelevant. But now, podcasting is the biggest thing in the world, and anyone can jump on this, an interview with whereas Chris Jericho or Steve Austin or a guy like Chris Van Vliet on YouTube or the platform is more accessible than ever before. People have more opportunities to get their word out there, and absolutely, what will be really interesting is to see if someone who's under WWE contract goes rogue and does something like this. Now, the legal ramifications of that are completely unknown to me, but can you imagine next week Sasha Banks pops up?
Yeah, someone who wants their release and just goes, right, well, if you're not going to let me go, then I guess
I'm going to drop bombs. Yeah. It's crazy, crazy, crazy stuff.
It is well worth a listen. The interesting thing as well to take away, just another glance at here, is the fact that, how we talk about heels and faces and how that's been shifting and changing and anti-heroes and what have you, is still the fact that in 2019, Vince was apparently upset about fans cheering for him because he was meant to be a heel when they were at house shows, and booing when he lost, despite the fact that Jon Moxley and I suppose every other wrestling fan with a brain kind of just knowing it's, them just knowing what's going on here.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane that this man, after this amount of years in business, Vince McMahon still has absolutely no connection to his audience whatsoever.
Well, let us know your thoughts on this. and what you think is going to happen going forward with Jon Moxley, with
Shoot
WWE,
season
with
open.
AEW, with the world of wrestling.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff, and let us know who you want to hear shooting on WWE for the banner.
Yeah, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE. Well, actually, they can follow both of us. You can follow him at
Andy H Murray. Don't have an H for you today.
The H stands for. Hey, that's something I didn't know a few minutes ago.
There we go.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. As I said, follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. And make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily wrestling podcasts. We're going to have a lot more of a deep dive into this later on today, no doubt. My thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley for making today very, very, very interesting. And we will see you soon.
Pew pew!